Hello, it's lesson 4 of science. So, we are understanding the concepts of mutation, selective breeding, and natural selection today. So all of these things link to evolution still. Evolution is an umbrella term with lots of things beneath it. So we've already looked at adaptation, we've already looked at inheritance, now we're looking at mutation. So think about what mutation means and what causes mutation to occur. Pause your video now and have a go at the resource sheet, and then as the lesson progresses you'll be able to go back and edit and improve your work. So pause the video now, press play when you're ready to continue. Okay, so when offspring is created, it has inherited traits from its parents. In this case, we've got two badgers, male and female, mummy and daddy, and here is our offspring. Okay, so what you can see here is it's got some wide paws, and those wide paws came from its father. This one has wide paws, this one has thin paws, and the child, the offspring, has wide paws too. Now the mother has long claws. Now long claws are then inherited by the child. So the child looks the same in the face as the mother and the father, but actually it's got the fat paws from the dad and the long claws from the mum. So a brand new little badger that doesn't actually look like either of them because it's taken parts from both. Now, sometimes there are brand new things that appear on the offspring. So in the case of this one, we've got some really hairy ears. Now, dad does not have hairy ears and mum does not have hairy ears. They did not inherit these ears from their parents. So this is called mutation. DNA mutation. So in the case of our badger, the offspring's got really fluffy ears, its parents don't because it's mutated as the genes have been passed down and the cell has been formulated during the reproduction process. So the badger, here it is, our lovely badger with their mutated ears, will then grow up to fall in love with itself, and you know how the story goes, it will reproduce to create offspring. And you'll see that some of its babies will end up inheriting those really fluffy ears. Some of them may not end up inheriting them, and that is absolutely fine because this is how inheritance works. We know that not every offspring is the same. In the case of badger 1, it has thin paws, long claws, fluffy ears. In the case of badger 2, it has fluffy ears, fat paws, short claws. In the case of badger 3, it's very similar to badger 1 with the long claws, thin paws, but no fluffy ears. And then this one is very similar to the first one as well. Not completely identical because remember that we have over 8 million different combinations of those chromosomes. So mutation occurs during the early stages of the growth of an offspring when cells are rapidly reproducing. We know a male sperm will join with the female egg cell, and when they join together we have those 46 chromosomes forming pairs, and that starts the fertilization process. And the cell, there's two cells that are formed to make one, starts to multiply drastically. That's how babies are created. And it's during that multiplication of those cells that mutations occur. Now, mutations are random. They can't be planned for, and they are surprisingly common. So in current studies in humans, there is a suggestion by scientists that every single child, including you, including me, has roughly 70 unique mutations. Now, not all of these are things that are visible on the outside or as extreme as fluffy ears. They may be something really tiny, like a dip in one of your earlobes, or the way that, I don't know, one of your toes is longer than the other, something like that, something tiny. It might not even be on the outside. It might be to do with internally and organs, things like that. So, mutations can be helpful. They allow us to be better adapted to our environment, or they could be a hindrance. We'll go on to this a little bit later. Now, mutations will never ever cause you to become Wolverine. No matter how many people talk about mutations and associate with the X-Men, it is not going to give you bones growing out of your hands like claws. So obviously that's very silly. But mutations in terms of human mutations are very small. So it doesn't just occur in humans or animals. It can occur in plants. It can also occur in viruses, which only survive in living cells. So there's a suggestion that the coronavirus, COVID-19, obviously we think it's the first ever one, but actually coronaviruses are a term of viruses that have been around for years and years and years. And what scientists are currently wondering is whether or not one of those original coronaviruses actually mutated, it changed, and therefore that's how we've got the one that we've got now. So in most cases, new viruses do evolve through mutation from old viruses. Now, if you were to go back in time, just a few thousand years, you'd find that all dogs originally evolved from an ancestral, group of grey wolves. So, how did they end up as the dogs we own and love today? So we know that all of these dogs, my lovely little fluffy tiny dog, maybe your big massive strong dog, they've all got a common ancestor, and that's wolves. So how did I end up with my fluffy little dog and you end up with your massive strong dog? Let's find out. So it was a form of mutation. So the wolves would reproduce, and during their reproduction there would be some kinder, tamer, calmer wolves. Now humans noticed that the actual really fearsome wolves were too fearsome for them to kind of harness to use to help with work. But the less fearsome, the more tame, if you will, those calmer wolves would approach men more, and those men thought, how I can use this, so they took the kinder, let's call it that, wolves, and then they bred those so that they would then have kinder babies, and they wouldn't allow the fearsome wolves to breed. So in this picture here, we've got mum and dad wolf. They've had 4 babies, but one of them is going to be kind of cast aside and not allowed to mate. So the genes of that fearsome wolf has been being unable to be passed down. So evolution of these wolves took generations. It was guided by humans. So at the start of the process, the humans noticed that some of the offspring of the wolves were not as fearsome. The tamer wolves were then handpicked to breed with other tamer wolves, so the wolves with more fearsome behaviour were cast aside and were not chosen. Over time, humans continued to see these random mutations. These wolves would become tamer and tamer, but they all look the same. Then all of a sudden, there would be one, through mutation, that was a lot fluffier. And they thought, oh wow, wouldn't it be really nice to have a really fluffy dog? So they started to breed all the fluffy wolf offspring together. Now they also would notice that some of them were more intelligent than the others. So they would then breed those intelligent dogs to again get intelligent puppies. Some of the wolves would be more muscular than others. Some of them would be more smaller than others. And therefore, they then bred them in these special ways to end up with all of the dogs that we have today. So believe it or not, your dog and my dog, if we all go back in time, they are all related to these ancestral wolves. Now, this process, led by humans, was called selective breeding, where the humans selected the traits that they wanted to continue to be produced. Now, a massive amount of observable evidence from many different fields, so genetics, chemistry, paleontology, mathematics, overwhelmingly suggests that, like all dogs, all living things, so that's me, that's you, it's a fish, even banana trees, all of them share a common ancestor if you go back enough. So the scientist view on evolution is that there was one species of, I don't know what it was originally, but that mutated in so many different ways, and then we all ended up being the way that we are today. So you are related to your dog in the scientific evolution process, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that that is the case. That is what did happen. So the simple process of reproduction with variation over billions of years looks to be responsible for all of the diversity of life we see today. Now we know that we're currently doing Is Anything Ever Eternal, the very Christian topic in RE, and we know that the Christian perception on the way in which the world was created was through God. God created the world in 7 days, and that he created life in all of its different forms on those different days. Now if you believe that, that's fine. I'm not telling you that you are wrong. At all. That is your right to believe that. Everybody has the right to believe whatever they want. I also have a responsibility to tell you that scientists take a different approach towards evolution, and so the scientific evidence suggests that Yes, we are all related, and over time we have all evolved in this way, which is why, in the most simplest form, people often talk about how humans evolved from apes, because over time the apes that we evolved from mutated in so many different ways that they ended up being like us today. Doesn't mean that the others stopped being around, or that the process just was a case of someone fell asleep and woke up and then was a human. It doesn't work like that. It's over billions of years that this process of evolution has occurred, which leads me to think, goodness me, if we continue to evolve in this way and the world continues to be habitable, what will happen in billions more years to the human race? So, you've been asking, well, okay, isn't evolution really random? And if people have been, getting in touch with dogs and working in this way and that way, how has they ended up being so random? Evolution is random, but like with the wolves, it can be guided. So the way in which we got to be the humans we are today was random. It was just random mutation that led us to be humans today and have such different species. But the process with dogs from being wolves was not random. This was guided, and it was guided by humans. Now, humans guiding is them acting as a breeder. So this is called selective breeding. But in our next lesson, next week, we know that we said about the randomness for us. How did we manage to survive? Now that process is called natural selection, and it's where the environment guides the evolution process. So natural selection is something we're going to focus on next week. I'd suggest that you pause the video and you rewind and you watch it again before you complete your resource. So all about mutation, how mutation is the fact that when those chromosomes join together and we start to create multiple cells in a baby, the offspring take a lot of the DNA from their parents, they inherit a lot of those traits, but they may also show up to 70 different individual mutations where the codes that they've received from their mum and their dad have edited a little bit to create something completely unique. So, wonderful stuff. Now, there is a wonderful video on YouTube and a wonderful channel called Stated Clearly. So if you get really confused, then go on to YouTube and type in Stated Clearly and find their evolution videos. Now, it is really for children who are a little bit older than you, secondary school age, but I find it really interesting. So if you're a little bit interested yourself and think I want to do a little bit more research, either do a bit of Googling on mutation and selective breeding, or find the mutation and selective breeding evolution videos on the YouTube channel Stated Clearly.